Hello, Internet. I'm giving just a few seconds for people to join here before I go into the wrap, but my name is Evan Jones. I'm the community manager for Pursuitery.com, which you can see spelled out here for any of you who have questions. Shout out to EdGamer. Today's a very special Geekout. We'll be building a Raspberry Pi. We're going to take one of these, and over the course of an hour, turn it into one of these, and then it will run one of these. Pretty simple. The Pi is a really great tool for makers and hackers. It is a computer. It's a computer about the size of a credit card. Runs $30, $35. There are 3 models of it. The newest model is the Model B+, and one of our engineers, Scott, actually lent this one to us today, and he helped us out with some work, and we'll be doing some more Raspberry Pi Geekouts in the future. Very excited about it. But it's a great way to get started with home computing, and it's a very, very cool way to get started with, say, the Linux command line, which is, I learned more about the command line actually working with my Raspberry Pi than I ever did messing around in Linux itself, although technically I'm splitting hairs there and confusing things because this SD card is where your operating system is held on your Pi, and this is my media server for my house. Now, what I have over here, in that little blue box you see there, that's running what is called Raspbian, which is a Linux build optimized for the Raspberry Pi using, it's called Wheezy. Again, I'm somewhat of a neophyte myself, so it's sort of one of those things where we're going this together. But the takeaway is, thanks to these SD cards, as I move the mic closer and move away so I can breathe, these SD cards allow you to run a variety of different operating systems on your Pi, and you can do a ton of cool things with this. There's easily hundreds of cool hacks that are available. One of my personal favorites, and one that I'm going to do soon, is turning a Raspberry Pi into a miniature FM transmitter, which I'm very excited about. And so we're going to fly without a net today, and we're going to build one of these out, and then we're going to see how it runs. So we'll be using NOOBS. And on Pursuitery.com, we've posted some links to some guides, and I'll be sure to put those in the YouTube video in the archives for future so everybody can see them. And the guides walk you through step-by-step how to build out a Pi. And you're going to need a few things. Now, one of the most interesting things about the Raspberry Pi, the platform, the computer, and everything else, is that you'll probably spend more money on your peripherals than you will on the Pi itself. You're going to need a monitor. You're going to need a Pi. You're going to need an SD card. I suggest one that's at least 8 gigs. You're going to need either an HDMI cable or RCA cable, depending on upon your model, to connect to a TV or a monitor. I'm using an HDMI cable here with this one. I don't think that the newest model, being the Model B+, has an RCA output. Just want to alert people to that. Again, you can double check all this stuff, but you are going to have to use all those parts, and you're also going to need, woo indeed, sir, it's a loud day at the office. You're also going to need a USB mouse or a USB keyboard, and perhaps the most important thing for the sake of power, you're going to need a 5-volt micro USB adapter. Say that 5 times fast. A 5-volt micro USB adapter for your Pi. I just use, let me put this out here. And I didn't trip and fall over myself, that was intentional. This is an old cell phone charger. You see it goes into the micro USB there. And I read out the information here, and it has enough power to power the Pi. Now again, there are 3 different models available. I don't know if they're selling the first model anymore, but this is what I use on my home Pi, which is there, my home Pi. Home Pi noticed me, as it were, and it works perfectly fine, but that's obviously the most important bit because power is an issue. You'll also note that I have an RJ45 Ethernet cable running into the Pi because it is internet enabled. And also, I don't have it out today, but HDMI will handle sound, and there's also a headphone jack there that can monitor sound. I just hooked that up to my home stereo at my house, and that's what runs my media server. It's exciting stuff. So with that said, my best advice for people, sometimes I get asked questions about making peripherals cheaper. The best advice I have is to look at junk shops and look at thrift stores and things like that, because there are just 1,000 cables around. I'll ask friends, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I have one of those. Go ahead and take this cable. And that's how I got some of the stuff for my Pi set up. And it's really cool to be able to build a computer for 50, 60 bucks. So we'll be using an operating system called NOOBS. And I chose NOOBS because it's very hard to screw up and it's very easy to work with. It means new out-of-box software, and it's not just a crappy acronym. It actually means something. And NOOBS is going to let us choose from a variety of operating systems. As I mentioned before, we're going to install Raspbian today, but we're getting NOOBS on there first, and then once we load up the Pi, that gives us the choice to install Raspbian. For the sake of time, I would like to note that some of these downloads are pretty heavy in terms of what they require for download time. So what we're probably going to do, in fact what we are going to do, is I've got the image for NOOBS downloaded on my computer, and I'm going to show you how to format the SD card using this special software that will allow us to just get NOOBS up running, and then I will show you the end result, which will be Raspbian running on this machine. So first, let's get the hard part out of the way, and we'll get NOOBS onto our SD card. I'd like to note that I'm using a Mac today, but I've included links on our Geekout page on Pursuitery that show how to do it on both Windows and Linux as well. So we're going to format our SD card. As I put my power cable back, pardon me while I fall down again. Okay. You can't keep a good computer down. Alright, so formatting your SD card. The first thing we have to do is download NOOBS from RaspberryPi.org's downloads page. Again, this is all going to be online.
Where am I going to go?
Stay there.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. Is it just me?
You caught me explainatroning. We just got caught up to the point where we're formatting the SD card with NOOBS. How you doing?
Okay. I've just been fighting with that myself.
Okay, well, I literally got to the point on my notes here, and these are called notes and not a script, where we're working through that process. And as I mentioned earlier, on the Pursuitery.com page, we've got a work-through flow guide that should help a lot. There's a couple good guides on there. Okay. So I've already downloaded the NOOBS image onto my Mac, which is what I'm using here. I don't know what system you're using, but there's a variety. But there's some good guides again available on that RaspberryPi.org downloads page.
Okay.
And the next step is you have to insert your SD card. I use an 8 gigabyte SD card. They recommend on this website 4 gigs plus. You've got to insert that into your computer.
Okay.
And as far as the actual formatting goes, we'll be using the SD Association's formatting tool. And the fact that there's an SD Association makes me just feel better about everything in the universe in general.
Okay.
So, do you need a link for that, or can I post one up?
Well, let's see. So I think I'm just about to where I downloaded the zip, and I just need to copy it onto my SD card and then put my SD card in there. So I'm not sure if I need that or not.
Well, as a SpeedBuild goes along, it depends on how you format it. I'm rolling with NOOBS today. When I formatted the Pi behind me, that actually I did it on my Windows machine. It's a little bit easier to do. It can be done through the Mac via the disk utility as well as through the command line, but for the sake of speed and keeping everybody up to date on this one, because this is going to our YouTube page, I just went ahead and got involved with NOOBS because it's very hard to screw up. And I figured if you're going to start speed building Pis, you may as well take the easiest way to go about it. So.
Okay, agreed.
All right, so anyway, sdcard.org/downloads/formatter_4, which is not the easiest thing to say. We're, again, using that software right now to actually format the SD card, and then we're going to put the NOOBS software on it so that we can go ahead and get an OS onto our SD card, which is where our Pi will run off. And so I'm putting in a screenshot here, an Imager. Wow. For some reason, the office is dead quiet until somebody has to do a live broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the trucks have to pass by at once.
Yeah.
But anyway, the SD Association's formatting tool is a piece of software they put out available, and I just entered in Imager a screen caption, which I'll later update all of our guides with, for what we should have listed. The important thing here is that we're going to insert the SD card. The SD card has to be in. I know it sounds like something basic to say, but always double check because you're formatting memory here. So make sure your SD card is put in there, and make sure you've selected your SD card and not something else. You don't want to wipe out a hard drive. Part of why we're working with NOOBS today is because it's very easy to work with, but some of the stuff can get kind of advanced. We're going to throw a few things at once at you, and I'm actually moving somewhat fast, all things considered. But when you're working with memory and you're working with your disk utilities and whatnot, you want to be very careful to make sure that you're working with the right thing. And the SD formatter allows you just to choose the SD card right then and there and follow the steps, and you don't take the risk of accidentally nuking anything. Not to say that I don't think that the Pursuitery audience would, because you're all obviously geniuses with great tastes.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me, taste should be singular. I've been editing all day. I've been editing papers all day. So make sure you have your SD card input and that you've selected the card in the SD formatter. And then we're going to select the formatting option. And this is all in a checklist on the actual software. And the formatting option we're going to use is going to be overwrite. So it's going to say overwrite format, and under that it will say it takes time depending on the card capacity with overwriting and erasing data in the card. Now this is not really going to be an issue here, because I have gone ahead and purchased a new card from SanDisk, which put me back, I think, about $10. And one of the wonderful things about the Pi, I've mentioned it once or twice, is that you probably spend more on peripherals than you will on your actual computer. So, flying without a net here, I'm going to go ahead and click the Format button, and if it destroys the space-time continuum, I'd just like to say it's been a pleasure knowing all of you.
Bye.
And here we go, without a net. And I'm watching the format prompt run, and it is just as fascinating as you think it would be. Okay, so I'm actually going to share my screen just so people see what it is. It's literally just a bar filling up with blue, just so everybody sees what's going on here. Yeah, you can feel the excitement coursing through the office. So yeah, this is a big part of the entire Pi situation is literally waiting it out. And even though this card had been, I think this card is empty. I just want to be really sure, because you are putting an entire operating system on it, which is the very backbone upon which your Raspberry Pi will rely. And there you go. But we're just going to wait this out until this goes all the way. I think it'll take maybe about 10 minutes or so. If you have a quiche or something in the oven, feel free to check on it. I actually don't recommend people bake and do Geekouts at the same time. It's me being jocular. Anthony, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in St. Louis.
Pardon?
St. Louis.
All right. The Lou.
The Lou, indeed. And are you in California?
Yeah, we're in our office is in Los Angeles for Pursuitery. We have a variety of people working all over the place, though. I am Wisconsin, Los Angeles on my day-to-day, but I've done Geekouts from a couple other places as well. Have you had much experience with the Pi?
Nope. No, I've been kind of playing around with Arduino and went to Ben Nuttall came to a local makerspace. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, Ben's great.
Yeah, he may have even come out your way, or actually, I think he might have stopped in Utah. He was making a trip, stopping in makerspaces. But anyway, yeah. So he kind of talked about it and was definitely very inspiring. And so I thought I'd give it a try. And that was a couple of weeks ago, and it's just been sitting here. So
Yeah, I had the same issue. What happens? I got mine. I got mine right before I'd started a very interesting but very demanding contracting job a couple years ago, and so it sat there. I was so excited to have it. They've sold over 2 million Raspberry Pis, I believe is the current figure, over 2 million. But when I first got it, my Pi sat there on my shelf for like 5 months. I was so excited to get it, then I just had it there. I just didn't do anything with it. I was so busy with life at the time. And then after my position had ended, I had the time again. I built out my media server with it, and I'm just like, why did I not start messing with this the instant I got it? But I found a variety of great sources and guides on the internet, and I always like them. I always like messing with them because you can really you can customize it to your heart's intent because it's running Linux, and you can do all this kind of hacking and making with it, or you can just have it be a system. Like I taught myself how to run cron jobs as part of my alarm by SSHing into my Pi, and that's a bit more involved, the command line stuff, but it gives me the capacity to do that. Very low overhead, so finance-wise, it was very simple.
Sure.
All right.
Do you mostly use it as a media center?
Well, for the one build that I have, build being the one OS card that I have, I use that as a media center, and I basically run tests against it, and I haven't really messed with. I was trying to put on some libraries so I can do some Python programming and mess with Twitter a bit, but that got a little more involved for me than I thought time-wise. But yeah, mostly it's my media center, and the Raspbian build has Scratch on it. I don't know if you can see the Scratch Ninja Cat, but we do a lot of Scratch stuff here at Pursuitery. I think our next, and I say think, I can't promise to, one of our next goals is to see if we can run a small Minecraft server off one, and I actually believe we can. It's going to involve some trickery, and I know we're going to have to probably run some mods against it, but I think we can do it.
All right. Well, I have an 8-year-old son that's Minecraft obsessed, so if that works out, I'll want to hear about it.
Well, you're in luck because Camp Minecraft 2.0 starts on Monday on Pursuitery.com.
I am signed up for that. Really.
Oh well, thank you very much. Minecraft has been it's one of those things where I just like sit back and watch it happen and get really excited, but it's kind of amazing.
It's very amazing. I don't think either of us knew what it was, my son either, when we started, and basically through his exploration I could slowly see what it was, and then I was a high school teacher when he first got into it, and then I found out one of my students was like doing part-time work just designing worlds, and so I started to get a sense of the scope and all the amazing things you can do with it and what it was doing for my kid's brain. It seemed like good stuff.
Yeah, the funny thing about Minecraft, and we did a Camp Minecraft over the summer, is that I tell the story a few times. I always feel like it embarrasses me, but it's an honest story. I was, you're busy with the day-to-day, and we're making sure Pursuitery runs, and that we take care of the community and make sure everybody is, getting their word in and working on these cool programs. I kept saying to myself, I'll start building tomorrow. I'll start building tomorrow. And I think 3 or 4 days into the server, I got on, and I was so intimidated by what was happening on the server, just like I didn't know where to start. That I lurked the entire time. I just went around and checked things out, and looked at everything. It was just one of those like, oh my goodness, wild moments.
Right. As a teacher, though, I think that's kind of one of the exciting parts about it, is that there are people of up to all different levels and ranges of thing. I mean, they're just doing all kinds of stuff, and so it's kind of a neat place to. I know my son's benefited by just immersing himself in it and getting ideas. Of course, also watching YouTube videos about it, but just also kind of diving in and, like you said, you could participate at a lurker level or take on a real leadership role even, and so there's so much to learn.
Yeah, and I think this discussion is, I think the bar is just about a third on the formatting. I think this discussion is proof that Minecraft takes over everything.
Darn it. I was about to say, I don't mean to dominate your Raspberry Pi geek out with Minecraft talk, but I guess it's also promotion for the camp.
Oh, that's part of it. I want to get us to a point where at least I got to extract the files from our download and put them on the card, but it's moving so slowly. I expect it to take maximum 10 minutes. It's been about, I think, 4 or 5, and it's still just kind of moving forward. What I'll probably end up doing, and what I want to do anyway, is I'll show everybody the Raspbian build in a bit. But yeah, it's a big part of it, and also I have seen. Just the thing about what Minecraft and the whole side of it is just the idea of it and the spirit of being like, I'm going to make something from just this world. Like, here I am. I'm going to take this little bit of this and make something out of it. And I think that's true. And here's where I tie it all together with the Pi as well. Mm-hmm. It's just okay. Well, here's this sort of slate upon which I can work, and it's very fascinating. But yeah, just doing the build out on the, I'm just doing the formatting here, and then basically, if you've got the download of NOOBS from RaspberryPi.org, what we're going to do is, after you've got that download, you extract the files to your computer, and then you, after the card formats, you just extract those files, those files that you've got extracted, you just copy them to your new SD card, and then it's just a question of, getting your first boot ready with your peripherals. Peripheral-wise, I think I'd mentioned this before you joined. I get asked oftentimes because you've got 2 or 3 Pis around your house and you have all these peripherals and whatnot. People ask me like, well, I've ended up spending more on my peripherals than I did my Pi, which is not uncommon. How do I avoid that? And my suggestion to people was ask your friends if they have the cables and the stuff you need, because like my friend just gave me an Ethernet cable that I've been using and I've been bringing to work all the time, and I can throw a rock and hit a USB keyboard that somebody doesn't need anymore, and SD cards are kind of the more annoying part. I've had to swallow my pride a few times and pay full price at just a random computer store for one, but asking around, and also I found stuff in junk shops. Like you're going to spend more on your monitor than you will on your Pi, but I seriously think that you can build one for less than build a whole computer out for less than $100, which is really cool. And if you remember, like being a child of the '80s, in my case, like building out your computer in the early '90s was kind of pricey, and it made it pretty prohibitive. But and then you get into some of the stuff we're talking about doing later on. As we hit the halfway mark on the formatting, some of the stuff we're talking about doing later on is they have what's called is the Raspberry Pirate Radio. Get it? It's a pun. Where you can attach an FM antenna to one of the serial ports, I believe, and have it broadcast. I believe it will broadcast MP3s, and it's one of my goals for Pursuitery in the next couple of months is to do that one, just so I can have the end result of it and be able to broadcast MP3s.
Yeah.
To people that don't own radios.
Well, people still own radios. So let me, if you don't mind asking, I think I might be just a bit ahead of you. I've got the first time I tried to copy onto my SD,
You're breaking up just a little tiny bit. You may want to check your settings.
Oh, okay.
I am getting what you're saying. It's just it's that weird Robotron voice where everything not good.
Is that any better?
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. It might just be my voice.
No,
I'm accused of.
I'm not kidding you, Anthony. Your
voice
is fine.
Okay. So I tried. I originally downloaded it and tried to put it on the SD card and popped it in the Pi, and nothing happened. And then I realized it was still in that folder that it extracted into. So I figured probably the problem was it needed to be outside of that folder. And it seems to work now. So I do have it up and running here. I've got the screen with choosing Raspbian data partition or Raspbian boot to scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where we're headed, or do I have the right?
Okay, so I'm pulling from memory here. If it's what I'm thinking of, where it's just the general page, where it's like it's 9 options on a blue background. It's a gray box on a blue background.
Yeah, honestly, I did it. Yes, I expected 9, but I only have 3. I don't know if it's because I downloaded something wrong or one with. I was expecting other options besides Raspbian, but. It is the same screen you're talking about.
Yeah, because when you first boot Raspbian, you get that formatting guide, and like booting off, and that's what I worked through the other day when somebody gave me a Raspbian build. When you boot off NOOBS, it gives you a choice to install what OS you'd like to install via a wired internet connection. So I couldn't quite say. Unfortunately,
I'm not wired.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry. Yeah. Maybe that's why. I think the zip that I downloaded said it could be offline or online, but maybe if you do it offline, you don't get all those other choices.
Yeah. Again, I couldn't speak authoritatively because this is actually my first build out with NOOBS, but and I could be very wrong on this. I'm prepared to be raked over the coals, internet. If you're watching this, all of you, I could be very wrong on this. From what I understand of NOOBS, I thought it was basically a place where you were given the option to get the OS on your system from one centralized place. But again, I'm willing to go out there and say that was my guess.
Gotcha.
But I keep my Pi wired up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I was gonna pick Raspbian anyway. Should I go ahead and I click on it? Now it tells me how much space I need. Now I have the option to install. Is that the plan? Should I click it?
Well, how do you feel about that? The classic "put it back on you" question.
I don't know. Otherwise, we could just talk about Minecraft. But I think I'm doing.
Click it. No, please. I think
I clicked it.
Yeah, you've made the decision.
Oh wait, I got a warning for. Wait a minute.
Oh.
It will install. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah. And again, part of the reason why you're actually illustrating the point that I was making earlier, that it's very low overhead computing, and if worse comes to worse, I haven't heard of anybody nuking a Pi yet outside of overclocking it. But if worse comes to worse, you've got to reformat an SD card or something like that.
Right.
That's why I really like that. Now imagine like it's back in the 90s or even let's see, even the early 2000s, and you run the risk of like
$2,000.
Yeah, there goes my motherboard. I absolutely destroyed it. So that's why I love the Raspberry Pi so much for that very reason. Like, oh hey, if it doesn't go well, I'm not out a couple months of mortgage payments.
Yeah, totally different. Well, that kind of ties back to I think you're about to make a connection between Minecraft and Raspberry Pi and the sort of the ability to use it in a lot of different ways or explore it in a really simple way, or it sounds like try some really extravagant stuff with it.
Yeah, it's still Hamago. It's still hang out, mess around, geek out. That's part of what I really like about Mac. And actually, I have mentioned that when I've mentioned, for some reason I keep talking about my job interview stories like it was so long ago, but I was recently interviewed on a podcast and they were talking to me about what I was doing beforehand, and I had told them that I was messing around with Raspberry Pi a lot when I was interviewed, and that I'd been using it as my alarm clock by way of cron jobs that I learned how to schedule just as Just for giggles, because it was really funny to hear clips from some of my favorite movies being yelled at me over my stereo at random times. And of course, then there's periods where I can't turn them off. That's the hard part. But again, if worse comes to worse, I reformat an SD card so that my computer stops yelling at me in the voice of my favorite cartoon characters or whatever it was. But yeah, the format job's just about here, and so you clicked install, and so now what's it doing is.
Well, now I'm in your boat. It's actually, if I weren't chatting with you, I'd probably be reading kind of nonstop, nice little tips about things you can do once it started, like Scratch and how to start from the command line.
Well, I mean,
I'm at 10%.
You know you've got the the standard login is going to be Pi, and then the standard password will be Raspberry.
Oh, it's just telling me that.
Okay. Powers, Anthony. Powers.
How did you do that?
I had the weirdest thing where every now and then I blank on the logins, but those just default logins and default passwords. One interesting thing I would suggest is to make sure that you get a client on your other machines if you're going to have your Pi wired up that will allow you to communicate with it. I believe I think it's Putty. Yes, it is Putty for Windows, Putty, or just the terminal on Mac. And to find out you need to find out the IP address of your Raspberry Pi so that you can control it from SSH, which is where things get awesome, if not a little bit intimidating, because it's all the command line based control of it. But that was really cool for me, and what I recommended people is we had a presentation where it was really cool. Some kids had taught me how to build paper circuits, and we're going to do some paper circuitry stuff on Pursuitery.com in the future. I think Howard Rheingold's hosting one on, correct me if I'm wrong, the 29th.
Yep, I just saw that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But
wearables next week, and then the one after paper circuits.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is really fun. But I was saying these kids had taught me how to build paper circuits, and I was really excited about it, and they were talking to me about, well, I want to get into computer stuff, but I'm nervous about this and that. I said, oh, well, you should start with the Raspberry Pi and just mess around with the command line there, because then you can get into, you can get into programming Python if you'd like to. You can run programs with that. You can learn a little bit about EE and some of the basics of not only computing but electrical engineering, and go further into that world without having, again, these huge costs attached to it. I quite honestly have been having a whole lot of fun with my Pi, and I really hope to do some more art projects and the like with it. But yes.
I definitely coming from that, originally being kind of drawn to it, starting with the Arduino. Yeah, I guess I'm fascinated by that potential too, and if it can be connected online, then thinking about what kind of, from other devices, I could talk to it to perhaps tell it to do physical world things.
Yeah, and this hasn't been promoted really heavily because we're still working out, but we're doing, I don't know if you're familiar with the Internet of Things.
Sure.
Yeah, but we're looking forward to doing some Internet of Things Geekouts, and we were talking about specifically how to get the Pi in the mix in some way, shape, or form, or possibly using like X10s and things like that. It's just the idea of this really cool integrated computing stuff being very accessible is really exciting. And I believe the formatting is almost over. I'm split between putting the card in with the downloader, or just going ahead and showing everybody out there what the Raspbian build actually looks like. But I have completed the formatting.
Okay.
And I'm just going to open up my thrilling watching. I know. I'm going to open up my system here, my Finder, and copy the files over to my SD card, which I have titled NOOBS. And believe you me, I'm very excited about the fact that I've used NOOBS so many times in just casual speech of late. So extract the file you downloaded in step 1. Copy the files you extracted to your SD card. So I'm copying the files, which is noobs underscore v1.39 to my SD card.
Is that a folder?
Yeah, I'm copying the folder over.
With all this folder content still in the folder?
Yeah, that's the one unclear section of this guide. Like if I should copy the whole folder over, if I should open the folder up and copy things over.
I think you have to do to leave the folder out.
Oh goodness.
Because I think that's what happened to me the first time I tried, because I left it in the folder and didn't get anything. I mean, it could have been other factors, but when I did it the second time, I left all the stuff out of the folder, and it's working. So.
Yeah, that's actually kind of an issue they should address in there, because if it does create everything in a folder, it's you're extracting a folder from the zip.
Yeah.
So with that said, yeah, and one thing you learn when you start working in like with Linux and Linux-based systems and the like is that those folders and that architecture is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And if things are out of place, then it's a huge, huge issue because that's the roadmap.
Yep.
And in those systems where everything is treated as a file, and again, I'm almost a total neophyte in that regard, but I have had a lot of fun talking to people that specialize in those kind of systems and do a lot of work as sysadmins and the like. And they have completely got me to the point where I'm like, yeah, the more links around me, the better. But you know, it's a pretty big. If it's in a folder or not in a folder, that would sound like such a whatever question if you're trying to move around some MP3s or whatever. But it's sort of a huge thing when you're building out your operating system, even though it's going to be on. Just looking around to see about an SD card to show off with something the size of this. So anyway, it takes about the total build of noobs. The total size of the build is 1.47 gigabytes, and it takes about 5 minutes to copy over.
Mm.
So I'm torn between showing everybody the end result of the build, which is Raspbian, versus seeing what it's like to actually select Raspbian and download it. But I'm not going to make everybody watch a download video.
Yeah.
Live video blogging on downloads.
It's gonna go viral, Evan. Don't you doubt yourself.
Point the camera out I should point the computer out the window where we're like 6 blocks away from the ocean.
Oh. Well, I'll tell you, I actually I'm at like 54%, so I'm about halfway. One thing I might have learned is that whatever my expectations of SpeedBuild are.
Speed being very, very relative.
Relative here. So I haven't built anything like this in any other way, so I have nothing to compare it to. But I think I'm gonna cut out. I'm gonna eat dinner, and hopefully, sorry, I can't decide what would be ruder, eating in front of you.
Well, if it's gonna be now,
eating.
I'm just gonna turn my computer on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be worth jumping ahead and seeing what will happen.
Yeah, so this is the end result, which is the system setting up here. This is the end result of what we're doing the speed build of. This is Raspbian, and you can see it's giving us a report on everything that's happening with the computer. This is the whole shebang. And it's really cool to see. There's nothing quite like powering on a system for the first time and seeing all the stuff just go through. You've got this feeling of limitless possibility as you watch everything happen. And it is prompting me from my Raspberry Pi login. So the default login is Pi, and the default password is Raspberry. All right. Comes with absolutely no warranty in all capital letters to the extent permitted by applicable law. So I entered StartX, and this is going to get us into the GUI, the graphical user, the graphical user interface. I host a bunch of these every week, and I never stop mumbling. And you know what? I hope I never do. I'm hoping I keep the heart of it. But yeah, so this is the ultimate build-up. So
Yay!
full box here, $30. That's my computer with HD capable output, and you see we have the IDLE for Python. That's there. I have actually I think I have that for both Python 2.7 and Python 3. Off it. The Midori browser for the internet, the Pi store, and our own personal favorite, Scratch.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get meta. I want to see. I want to see what Pursuitery looks like as I work on Pursuitery and you watch Pursuitery. And you see,
I think you're definitely gonna fall into that vortex now.
And you can see I was a little hasty here. I clicked on it and I opened it 3 times because it's not quite as fast, and I also am actually drawing a little more power off this than I should. Close, close. So here I am on Pursuitery, doing a Pursuitery Geekout, while pulling up Pursuitery on the computer we built during the Pursuitery Geekout, and tripping over my tongue all the way because I'm so excited. But yeah, this is there we go, Camp Minecraft.
All right.
And that's the Raspberry Pi. That's how it's done. So build your own, go about it accordingly, and then jump online and start having a ball.
All right. Well, I'll see you at camp.
Yep, Camp Minecraft is starting on Monday, and the build has copied over to my SD card. So now I'm going to shut my computer down and put the NOOBS build onto my Raspberry Pi, changing out the SD card. And there you go. That's the Raspberry Pi SpeedBuild. We got about 40 minutes in there. It's pretty good.
You say so.
Hey, how fast do you usually build an HD capable computer? Come on.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
somewhere.
This is it. Thanks a bunch.
All right, thanks for joining us. We'll see you all soon on Pursuitery.com. Take care. Bye-bye.